Hello and welcome to another edition of Only in Illinois, your weekly video recap from Reboot Illinois. I'm Madeline Dubeck here with Matt Dietrich, and a whole lot has happened in Illinois in the last week. Since we were last with you, we had a unanimous decision from the Illinois Supreme Court saying that the attempt to change the pension system in Illinois in 2013 is not legal, not constitutional. And as you put it in a post shortly thereafter, it's time we all pay up.
That's the way that I read the decision. It's 38 pages long, about 15,000 words. It's pretty long, but it really does come down to, in my opinion,
shut up and pay up.
Pay up. And a lot of other people are saying the same thing, although there's considerable discussion right now in Springfield about ways that they may be able to do some kind of reform, some kind of change. As it stands now, between now and 2045, the state has to figure out a way to get $111 billion into those pension systems to cover all the benefits that are going to be going out as people retire.
And in the meantime, very quickly, Moody's Investor Services has downgraded to junk status the city of Chicago's debt, as well as the Chicago public school system and the Chicago Park District.
Right, and those
and
downgrades...
the dominoes just fell very quickly.
And the downgrades came almost immediately after this pension decision, and what Moody said was that with these kind of pressures and without any source of relief from state law, that Chicago and the public schools and the Chicago Park District are not a good credit risk anymore. Probably the most immediate concern for Chicago is that by dropping down to this non-investment grade status, that could trigger a $2.2 billion that the city would have to pay back immediately.
Right. So the credit agencies really want to see a balanced budget. Mm-hmm. And the way to balance a budget and pay for this pension debt, they want to see some sign that all of that is going to happen.
Correct, yeah.
You either have to do it through spending cuts or revenue increases, in other words, tax increases.
Or a combination
or
of both.
a combination of both.
Right.
And so some of the ideas that we've seen tossed about seems much more likely that we'll see some kind of tax increase. Mm-hmm. As a result of this Supreme Court decision. Right,
and probably a package of tax changes. It's been suggested that perhaps we go from our current 3.75 personal income tax rate maybe up to, say, 4%, which is still less than you were paying before January 1st, right, but more than the 3.75 now.
Right.
Expanding sales taxes to
on
include
services, which is something that Bruce Rauner campaigned on, but hasn't really talked about since the campaign.
Right, and then we had a suggestion, the Civic Federation is one of the groups that has suggested maybe we should tax some retirement income, not all, but set an income threshold, and that income, retirement income, would be taxed. Currently, nothing you make from retirement sources is taxed in Illinois.
Right. So there are those ideas out there. There's the idea that the governor has advanced most recently, which is rewriting the Constitution, putting all workers into a new system with lesser benefits, or putting them into a 401k system. But today most recently he has started to hedge on that a little bit and say that, yeah, maybe that's not going to be found constitutional.
Right, well, he had a meeting with Senate President John Cullerton this week, in which I suspect President Cullerton probably explained to him some of the problems that they've encountered in the past. And President Cullerton's own plan, which involved negotiating some kind of changes in order to do something about the rate that the cost of living increases go up. Bruce Rauner had a press conference on Thursday in the Capitol in which he said, yeah, there may be some constitutional problems with my own pension plan. What most people have seemed to say is that, the Supreme Court decision is pretty clear that once...
You get the benefits you are due from the day you start working.
Right. and he'd have a hard time in going, ex post facto, changing the Constitution so that this agreement you signed on to way back then is no longer valid. I mean, the bottom line on all this is that what the Supreme Court said in its decision was, you're not going to get out of paying this money. Now, they may, as you said, President Cullerton has an idea that maybe they could enact some reform, but that's not going to cut in half what is now 111 billion. And there's another idea of, we say $111 billion because we're calculating based on getting the pension safely funded by 2045. Well, there's been an idea tossed out that why does it have to be 2045? Why can't it be 2057? And then you just even out the payments. So we'd be paying $7 billion a year into the pensions, which is a lot now. Actually, it'd be about a little less than a quarter of the operating budget now.
Right.
But when you get 20 or 30 years into it, it's not going to be that big of a fraction of the budget.
So you could fund other
Correct.
Government services a little bit more.
Right. The big question, of course, is we're on track now. We owe $6.8 billion into the pension systems in the fiscal year that starts July 1st. And they're supposed to have a budget for that done on May 31st, which is fast approaching. This is what the credit ratings agencies are going to be watching next, because if our lawmakers are unable to come to balance a budget and to set forth a plan by which they can address this Supreme Court decision, then you'll see the ratings agencies come after state government the same way they came after Chicago City government.
You're predicting Illinois will be junk too.
I'm not predicting, I'm just saying this is the way it happens sometimes.
It is indeed, and we should care about that. Who cares about the financial markets? You may be saying, well, you have to spend a whole lot more money on interest payments if that happens, among other things.
We're already
beyond
we've already
the
got the
stigma
worst,
that becomes attached to it.
and we already have the worst credit rating in the nation as a state, by the way.
There you go. All right, so that's it for this week's edition. That's a lot to swallow. Take your time with it. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next edition of Only in Illinois.